freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity, right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. And Michael Avenatti continues to tease out information he thinks he has against the president that's going to take down Trump for the purposes of building his slimy law practice, it would seem to me. But Avenatti over the weekend saying that Stormy Daniels isn't the only arrow in his quiver. He has 3 more undisclosed clients who have been paid hush money by Trump.
There are 3 additional female clients of mine that have not been disclosed that were paid hush money prior to the 2016 election, whether it be from Michael Cohen on behalf of the president, an entity that Michael Cohen formed, or AMI. That's what I'm saying.
But those women had relationships with the president, with Donald Trump?
Well, last time I checked, they weren't just handing out checks to anyone, whether they had a relationship or not.
Oh, he's so provocative.
Yeah, you know, anything I'll say in his defense, sort of, is Trump's caddish behavior brings out the parade of horribles like Michael Avenatti and Stormy Daniels and others, sort of a mess of his own making. But that doesn't mean it's criminal, and that doesn't mean there's any case for impeachment or prosecution of some other sort with respect to the president. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined again by famed Harvard law professor and the author of the book, The Case Against Impeaching Trump. He is Alan Dershowitz. Professor Dershowitz, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks. You know, the Avenatti show is very much a side show. It has really nothing to do with the Mueller investigation, as long as President Trump isn't foolish enough to do what President Clinton did, namely to testify under oath about his sex life. It basically is nobody's business. The voters have a right to take that into account in deciding who to vote, but it's not the business of prosecutors or anybody else. People want to have sex with other people and pay them money. Not to have it revealed, that's neither a crime nor a tort or a violation of any contract.
Right. And so what do you sense as the Southern District of New York's play here with Cohen and I guess by some extension Avenatti and the American media company, the National Enquirer Media Group? It seems that the only play for that, there's 2 potential criminal acts that could have been committed potentially. Campaign finance violation or some kind of extortion racket to silence Trump paramours.
Well, if it was an extortion racket, it would be extortion the other way. The person who pays the money is usually not the extortionist. It's the person who demands the money. I mean, let's put all this in context. Nobody is claiming that the alleged sexual encounters are anything but voluntary.
Right.
And why are we making heroes out of women or men who have voluntary sexual encounters and then get money for it? And then, not satisfied with the money they get, seek more money for it. That's not commendable activity in general. And yet, because people who are out to get Trump will take anything that they can get, they make heroes out of Avenatti and the women who are asking for more money for a consensual sexual activity. I just don't get it as a matter of general morality, why we are making heroes out of these folks.
Well, speaking of morals and maybe a lack of morals, attorney Michael Cohen, who in their right mind, I have never heard before of an attorney taping a conversation with anyone. Did he do it to to try and blackmail President Trump down the road, or why would he need that tape or want it?
Well, to take the best possible case scenario, I can imagine a situation where a lawyer needs to protect himself against the client, where he thinks the client maybe will change the story or go after him, and so he does it to protect himself. That's the best case scenario. I don't think it's the right thing to do to be taping your client, but I can understand it. The real question is who leaked the privileged tape, and then we need to know the answer to that. And nobody seems to be interested in getting to the bottom of it. Remember, the tape was leaked. The content of the tape was leaked before Giuliani waived the privilege, but after the former judge made a determination that it was privileged. So the question comes up, why was it leaked and who leaked it? Who benefits from the leak? Remember, if you can leak lawyer-client confidential information, you can also leak conversations between a priest and a penitent, a doctor and a patient, a psychiatrist and a patient. That's a very dangerous precedent to set. We ought to be preserving confidentiality. None of us should have heard this conversation. This conversation was entirely legitimate and privileged, and yet we know the content, and that's because somebody leaked it.
And if Cohen was the leaker, then he should face disciplinary action, if not disbarment.
Well, but we don't know who it was. We don't know
Right.
that it was Cohen. We don't know who it possibly
Right.
could have been. There are many people. I mean, we all have theories, but they're not worthy of putting out publicly because they're just theories.
Well, the Paul Manafort trial begins this week, and there's
It's not the Paul Manafort trial. It's the trial of Donald Trump.
Well,
as Judge Ellis, who presides over the trial, said, nobody's interested in Manafort. Nobody would have ever gone after him for these alleged crimes. What they're trying to do is squeeze him. And as he pointed out, sometimes people who are squeezed not only sing but compose. And here you have the judge presiding over the trial who himself said nobody's interested in Manafort. They're only trying to get him to testify or provide information against President Trump. And yet civil libertarians seem to love this. I mean, if the shoe were on the other foot, if it were Hillary Clinton who were being prosecuted, if she had been elected president, every civil libertarian would be jumping up and down in anger at the way this is being conducted. And yet the civil libertarians, including the American Civil Liberties Union, are very, very quiet, which is one reason why I, as a liberal Democrat who voted for Hillary Clinton, am speaking out so much, because nobody else is making the civil liberties case here. And civil liberties are important. We can't just suspend them because we don't like who the person is that is whose civil liberties are being violated.
Speaking of civil liberties, the Carter Page FISA warrant documents that were released, and you had not just Adam Schiff, but some Republicans saying that from those documents, the warrant was justified, the surveillance was justified. What was your take from what we could divine from the unredacted portions of those documents?
Well, one thing is clear, and that is the Justice Department should not have withheld some of the crucial information they withheld. They should have disclosed to the court that this dossier was paid for by people who were trying to get Hillary Clinton elected. That is an important fact, and it was left out. They should have also mentioned that the source of the information, the man who wrote the dossier, was also accusing President Trump of salacious conduct in a bedroom in Moscow. And if that had been put in the application, the FISA court might have discredited the source. But they quite deliberately left out the two most damaging facts, and they got the warrant. That's indisputable. The question whether they would have gotten the warrant anyway, I don't know. You know, the FISA court gives out warrants pretty easily, and there's no check and balance there. I have for years argued that the FISA court, by law, ought to have a devil's advocate. That is somebody who is given security clearance and is paid to make the case against issuing the warrant. So the court hears both sides, but right now they only hear one side.
Well, let me ask you that about the FISA court, just again, your kind of civil libertarian philosophy. This is a recent innovation post-Watergate. Should FISA courts be eliminated? Do we need them?
I think they should be changed. I think there should be an adversarial process, and it should be much more transparent, and it shouldn't be appointed by the Chief Justice, because that tends to load the court with people of the Chief Justice's political persuasion. There should be a broader appointing process. So there are a lot of things wrong with the FISA court, and those are institutional. I've been arguing that for years and years and years before President Trump ever even considered running for president. So all the points I'm making are points I've made, some of them for 50 years, but I'm criticized now because I'm making them in the context of Donald Trump. If I were making them in the context of Hillary Clinton, they'd have built a statue to me on Martha's Vineyard. But instead, obviously, many people on the left and liberals are attacking me. You should read some of the emails I'm getting, threatening emails. My family gets threatening emails just because I'm making a civil liberties case that happens to benefit Donald Trump. This time might have benefited Hillary Clinton, and in the future might benefit Bernie Sanders. Who knows?
Are you getting police protection?
Not on Martha's Vineyard, no. But actually, when I spoke in New York, I needed police protection, yes. When I made open speeches at events, book signings, etc. But, it's interesting because I've gotten some awards, too. My book, The Case Against Impeaching Trump, has become a New York Times bestseller, which means it's being read across the country, not just in one particular region. And so I'm hoping, I wrote it to help educate the American public as to what the criteria for impeachment are. I would have written the same book had Hillary Clinton been elected and being impeached. In fact, my publisher came up with a mock cover called The Case Against Impeaching Hillary Clinton, just to make the point, because it would have been the same book, except the names would have been changed.
Maybe A.G. Sulzberger will rally to your defense now that you're being threatened the way that he is, very concerned about the Fourth Estate and its members. Just lastly, I want to get your take on where you think the Mueller investigation is. The latest, news from around the investigation was Mueller looking or relooking at Trump tweets that came out last week. Are we just seeing mounting evidence, to the extent evidence of anything has been presented, that Mueller was never needed in the first place to investigate these matters?
I think Mueller was never needed in the first place. But imagine if Mueller had been appointed to investigate President Hillary Clinton, and they were looking at her tweets, and they were looking at her public statements, and they were looking at the fact that she may have, erased emails. Civil libertarians would be up in arms saying this is such a stretch of the obstruction law. But the same civil libertarians are now saying it's okay because they're going after Trump. The idea of putting together an obstruction case based on public tweets, based on public statements. People don't commit obstruction of justice in public. They commit it in private. And so this is such a stretch, and for me, such a show of weakness on the part of what Mueller has been able to put together, if the reporting in the New York Times is accurate.
Well, thank you for what you do. I know it's no fun to have to defile yourself to match wits with Avenatti. Well, yeah, but I mean, you have to go on cable TV and sort of subject yourself to Avenatti and Jeffrey Toobin. I mean, you're Alan Dershowitz, for goodness sakes.
No, Jeffrey Toobin's a great guy. Avenatti, I'll leave it to the people to judge him.
Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz, the New York Times bestseller is The Case Against Impeaching Trump. Alan, thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.